On a brisk October dawn in 2019, the stale breath of decay clung to the air inside the long-forgotten Blackwood coal mine, nestled 30 miles from the sleepy fringes of Pike County, Alabama. Deputy Sheriff Marcus Tanner gripped his flashlight tighter, its narrow beam slicing through the oppressive gloom like a reluctant confession. He had come expecting the usual mischief, restless teenagers defying warnings, scrawling tags on crumbling walls, leaving behind the litter of rebellion. But as the light danced across an unnatural barricade of jagged rocks and weathered timbers, something stirred in the shadows that no living soul should have witnessed. "Dispatch, this is Tanner. I need immediate backup at the old Blackwood entrance, and roll the medical examiner out here, priority 1. He barked into his radio, his words tumbling back at him from the cold stone, laced with an edge of disbelief he couldn't mask. What had begun as a forgettable patrol had twisted into a harrowing revelation, one that would finally pierce the veil of mystery shrouding Pike County for over 4 decades, bringing answers to questions that had festered like open wounds in the hearts of its people. There, concealed in a crudely hewn alcove behind the barrier, lay the skeletal forms of 2 figures, their bones intertwined in a silent embrace that spoke of shared fate. Fragments of faded fabric clung stubbornly to the remains, hints of once vibrant uniforms now dulled by time and earth. And glinting faintly amid the dirt, a small silver pendant, its surface etched with the simple initials SM, the same delicate trinket that Sarah Martinez had fastened around her neck on that fateful evening in 1974, when she and her identical twin, Rebecca, stepped out into the autumn night and were swallowed by it forever. For nearly half a century, the enigma of the Martinez twins' disappearance had lingered like a ghost in the collective memory of Pike County, a story whispered in hushed tones, a cautionary shadow that dimmed the warmth of family gatherings and turned ordinary walks home into paths of unspoken dread. They had been young women brimming with promise, their days filled with the simple rhythms of work at a local diner, their evenings alive with dreams yet to unfold. But one crisp fall night, after serving their last customers and sharing laughs with co-workers, they vanished without a trace, leaving behind only echoes, 2 unoccupied seats at holiday tables, 2 bedrooms frozen in time by a mother's unyielding faith, doors left ajar as if awaiting their return. Until this moment, when the mind's secrets finally yielded to the light, forcing a community to confront the pain it had buried deep. If stories that delve into the depths of human perseverance and the shadows of forgotten injustices move you, consider subscribing to MindVeil. Your presence here helps keep these tales illuminated, ensuring that the voices of the lost are never fully silenced. The revelation at Blackwood wasn't merely the closure of a dusty file on 2 missing souls. It was the spark that ignited a torrent of long-suppressed truths, exposing the hidden fractures running through this unassuming corner of Alabama. When the dust settled and an arrest was made later that year, it didn't point to some elusive wanderer or a monster from distant headlines. Instead, it shone a harsh light on a man everyone knew, a quiet fixture in town meetings, church pews, and neighborhood chats, who had wandered among them for 45 years, his ordinary facade masking a profound and chilling betrayal. At its heart, this narrative transcends the mechanics of a solved puzzle. It stands as a powerful ode to unbreakable resolve. A family who clung to hope through endless nights, lawmen who dusted off archived leads with weary but determined hands, and the quiet miracles of science that finally amplified the faint cries of the departed. Yet it also serves as a stark reflection of communal rupture, a place where suspicions spread like vines overtaking a garden, turning friends into strangers and shattering the illusion of small-town harmony when the ugliness beneath finally clawed its way to the surface. What lingers most eerily in the mind is the proximity of the truth all along. The individual at the center had been questioned in those frantic early days, but had slipped away like smoke through fingers. Decade after decade, he attended quiet gatherings to honor the lost sisters, exchanged sympathetic nods with their grieving parents, and upheld his unassuming life while the weight of his actions pressed inward, unseen and unspoken. From where are you following this tale? Share your corner of the world in the comments. It's endlessly fascinating how these threads of history and heartbreak connect us, no matter the miles between. In the pages that follow, we'll journey back to the fateful dusk of October 1974. Trace the winding path of a search that refused to end across generations, and unveil the seismic turn that granted a measure of peace to one of Alabama's most haunting, unresolved chapters. This is a tapestry woven from threads of profound loss, unshakable endurance, cunning betrayal, and a justice that arrived late but with unrelenting force. In the year 1974, Pike County, Alabama, was a patchwork of familiar faces and unspoken understandings, a place where the rhythm of life moved to the cadence of seasons and shared histories. Spanning rolling fields dotted with modest farms and clustered hamlets, it housed just over 25,000 residents who navigated their days with the easy intimacy of those who believed they knew one another's stories inside out. Doors seldom needed locks in the soft glow of porch lights, and the children chased fireflies until the first stars pricked the sky, their laughter a soundtrack to the fading day. Troy, the heartbeat of the county, centered on an understated downtown square where merchants hawked wares, elders swapped tales over checkers, and the air hummed with the gentle buzz of everyday exchanges. The early 1970s had brought winds of change to this tranquil southern outpost, stirring the air with both progress and unease. The echoes of the civil rights era still reverberated through the community, where shifts toward inclusion unfolded at a deliberate, sometimes hesitant pace as rural traditions met the demands of a changing nation. The distant war in Vietnam had exacted a heavy toll, claiming the lives of 17 local young men and sending others home with invisible scars that altered families forever. Whispers of economic shift hung heavy too, as factories began their slow exodus to cheaper horizons, though the coal mines, dark, demanding caverns beneath the earth, still provided the backbone of employment, offering paychecks laced with the constant whisper of danger. At the bustling crossroads of Main and Walnut Streets stood Murphy's Diner, its flickering neon sign a welcoming beacon against the encroaching twilight, drawing in patrons like moths to a flame. Far more than a place to grab a bite, it was the unofficial nerve center of Troy, a spot where dawn broke over farmers debating soil yields and rainfall patterns with steaming coffee in hand, where high schoolers piled into vinyl booths after Friday night lights, their voices a cacophony of triumph and teenage dreams, and where night owls from the mines or textile mills sought solace in greasy plates before descending into their laborious shifts. It was within these walls, amid the clatter of dishes and the aroma of sizzling bacon that Sarah and Rebecca Martinez carved out their early adult lives after crossing the stage at Pike County High in the spring of 1972. As identical twins in a town where Hispanic heritage was a rarity, they turned heads wherever they went, their presence a vibrant splash against the muted palette of local life. Their father, Robert, had uprooted the family from the sun-baked expanses of Arizona back in 1965, when the girls were just entering their teens, chasing a foreman's position at Blackwood Mine that promised stability and a step up from the precarious opportunities out west. The sisters were a study in mirrored perfection, both standing at a graceful 5'4", with cascades of silky black hair that caught the light like polished obsidian, eyes the color of rich earth that sparkled with quiet intelligence, and smiles that could disarm even the gruffest regular, filling the diner with an unexpected warmth. Yet, to those who looked closer, friends, family, the loyal patrons who knew them by name, the differences revealed themselves like hidden notes in a familiar melody. Sarah, born 7 minutes ahead, carried an air of thoughtful poise, her hair always parted neatly to the left, her words measured and infused with a gentle confidence that spoke of inner strength. She harbored ambitions of becoming a healer, tucking away her tips in a jar labeled nursing school, her mind already mapping out the path to a future where she could mend the broken. Rebecca, whom everyone called Becca, was her lively counterpart, her hair swept to the right in a casual wave, her personality a burst of energy that drew people in like a summer storm. She lived for the music that flowed from her guitar at church socials and community events, her voice rising in harmony with the strings, her dreams drifting northward to the neon lights of Nashville, where she imagined her songs finding a stage. They were two sides of the same coin, those girls. Donna Wilkins, the no-nonsense manager who ran Murphy's with a firm hand and a kind heart in 1974, would later recall with a wistful smile. Always on the same schedule, sharing that old beater car of theirs, even dressing in sync on whims. But Sarah was the one with the road map, always 3 turns ahead in her head, while Becca danced through the moments, pulling joy from the air like it was hers to command. That fateful Thursday, October 17, 1974, dawned like countless others in Pike County. A sky painted in soft grays and golds, the air crisp with the promise of falling leaves and harvest gatherings. The twins arrived at Murphy's promptly at 2 p.m., their matching blue uniforms crisp and starched, white aprons tied with practiced knots, ready to dive into the afternoon rush. The diner thrummed with unusual energy that day. A regional sales convention at the nearby farm equipment dealership had flooded the town with out-of-towners, their briefcases and banter filling the booths, while an early dismissal at the high school for teacher workshops sent clusters of laughing teens spilling through the doors, ordering milkshakes and fries with the abandon of unexpected freedom. Grainy black and white security footage, preserved through the years as a relic of that era's rudimentary tech, captures the scene in flickering detail. Sarah moving with efficient grace, refilling salt shakers and napkin holders in precise rows, her focus a quiet anchor amid the chaos. Becca at the counter, her laughter ringing out as she traded jokes with the regulars, her hands a blur as she poured coffees and plated slices of pie, turning the mundane into moments of connection. As the clock ticked toward evening, the crowd thinned, the sun dipping low and casting long shadows through the diner's plate glass windows. At precisely 8:07 p.m., the sisters clocked out, their pockets heavier with the day's tips, hard-earned coins that spoke of smiles exchanged and orders filled. They waved goodbye to the night manager, a gruff but affectionate soul who reminded them to bundle up against the chill, and stepped out into the cooling air. "See you bright and early tomorrow," Sarah called over her shoulder, her voice light and unburdened, words that would later haunt those who heard them, replaying in minds like a record skipping on a final note. Their walk home was a well-trodden ritual, down the bustling length of Main Street, past the stately courthouse square where lampposts flickered to life like watchful sentinels, then turning east along Pine Street for 5 familiar blocks to the modest clapboard house where the Martinez family had built their life. The path was illuminated by streetlights and the glow from shop windows, a route they had navigated hundreds of times without incident, chatting about the day's quirks or planning the weekend ahead. That evening, several witnesses would later recall seeing the twins pause at Henderson's Pharmacy, a cozy corner store with shelves stocked with sundries and a soda fountain that drew locals for quick treats. They browsed the card rack, selecting one adorned with delicate roses, Sarah's idea, knowing their mother's fondness for the flower, and paid with a smile, exchanging pleasantries with the clerk, Judith Abernathy, who noted their cheerful demeanor as they headed out around 8:30, silhouetted against the deepening twilight. The distance to home was a mere 12-minute stroll, a straight shot through neighborhoods where porches creaked with rocking chairs and the scent of supper lingered in the air. But as 9:15 came and went without the sound of the front door opening, Maria Martinez felt the first twinge of maternal instinct, a subtle unease that grew with each tick of the clock. By 10 o'clock, she had phoned the diner, her voice steady but edged with concern, only to learn that her daughters had left hours earlier, safe and sound, as far as anyone knew. By 11 o'clock, Robert was behind the wheel of their family sedan, cruising the dimly lit streets of Troy, his eyes scanning sidewalks and alleys for any sign of his girls, his mind racing through innocent explanations, perhaps a detour to a friend's or a spontaneous stop for ice cream. Midnight brought them to the Pike County Sheriff's Department, where they filed the report, their words tumbling out in a mix of hope and rising fear. "We didn't see it as urgent right away," former Deputy Calvin Brooks would admit in a reflective interview decades later, his voice carrying the weight of hindsight. "2 young women, gone for just a handful of hours. We figured they might have linked up with pals or caught a late showing at the drive-in. Give it till morning," we advised the family. But when dawn broke cold and clear, there was still no word, no phone ringing with apologies for worry, no footsteps on the porch, their beds smooth and empty as if untouched by life. By noon, on October 18th, the ripple of alarm had spread like ink in water, drawing friends, neighbors, and co-workers to the Martinez home in a growing wave of solidarity. Phone lines hummed with calls, makeshift maps were unrolled on the kitchen table, and search parties formed with a sense of urgent purpose, fanning out to retrace the twins' steps. The Sheriff's Department, now fully alert to the gravity unfolding, launched into action, interviewing those who had seen the sisters last, piecing together a timeline that seemed frustratingly ordinary, and appealing for any scraps of information that might illuminate the darkness. The search swelled like a tide, volunteers pouring in from every corner of the county to scour the route from Murphy's to home, peering into abandoned sheds with rusted locks, wading through overgrown drainage ditches where weeds tangled like forgotten secrets, and combing the wooded edges of town where shadows played tricks on hopeful eyes. The local radio station broke into its regular broadcasts with urgent pleas, the announcer's voice crackling with community concern. If you've seen Sarah or Rebecca Martinez, please contact authorities immediately. It was a sight unlike any other in my memory. Troy resident Margaret Simmons would recount years later, her eyes misting at the thought. Folks set aside their daily grind without a second thought, men phoning in absent from jobs, women packing sandwiches and thermoses for the searchers, even the big high school game called off. In that moment, nothing mattered but bringing those girls back where they belonged. By the third day, the weight of the situation had drawn in the FBI, their agents arriving with crisp suits and methodical questions, interviewing the twin circle of friends who spoke of their unbreakable bond, co-workers who recalled their infectious energy, and acquaintances who could offer only puzzled shrugs. They pored over the sisters' shared bedroom, a space frozen in youthful chaos, savings books tucked in drawers, untouched jewelry glinting in boxes, everything in place except for Sarah's cherished silver pendant, the one she rarely removed, now absent like a missing piece of her very essence. The most baffling element was the utter void of clues, no scuffled ground along their path to suggest a struggle, no reports of unfamiliar cars lurking in the dusk, no cries heard in the night. It was as if the twins had been lifted from the world in a single, silent breath, leaving behind only the chill of absence. Like the ground just opened up and claimed them, Robert Martinez told a cluster of reporters gathered outside his home a week into the ordeal, his voice cracking like dry earth underfoot, his eyes hollow with the exhaustion of endless worry. My daughters weren't the type to run off. They loved their family, their home. Something terrible happened that night, and out there, someone holds the key to it all. As days blurred into weeks, the relentless search pressed on, but the flame of hope flickered lower with each fruitless hour. Posters bearing the twins' smiling photographs, captured in a moment of carefree joy, blanketed storefronts across Pike County and beyond, their faces staring out with an innocence that twisted hearts. The local newspaper, the Troy Messenger, devoted its front page to the story for 7 straight days, a record that underscored the community's collective ache. The disappearance marked a turning point for Pike County, stripping away the veneer of security that had once defined it. Doors that had swung open in welcome now clicked shut with new locks. Children who had roamed with wild freedom were called inside at dusk, their parents' eyes scanning the horizons with newfound wariness. A town that had prided itself on its safety now grappled with the reality of an invisible predator, the knowledge that 2 of its brightest lights had been extinguished without warning or trace. The Pike County Sheriff's Department in 1974 was a small outfit, just 11 deputies stretched thin across vast rural expanses, their expertise honed on routine matters like rowdy drunks, family squabbles, and petty thefts rather than the labyrinth of a high-profile vanishing. Sheriff Walter Donovan, a veteran of 3 terms more known for his handshake deals and political savvy than razor-sharp detective work, found himself thrust under a glaring national lens as media descended, their cameras flashing like accusations. "We're leaving no stone unturned," he repeated at daily briefings, his words a mantra that rang hollow to those in the know, former deputies who would later confess that the early efforts lacked the structure and skill needed to navigate such murky waters. The critical first 48 hours yielded scant physical leads. Canvases of the route turned up little more than a discarded blue ribbon with white spots near a street corner, initially sparking a flicker of excitement before tests dismissed it as unrelated debris. Without a clear crime scene to anchor them, investigators shifted to timelines and witness hunts, yielding the case's first glimmer. Reports of a blue pickup truck idling suspiciously near the pharmacy around the time the twins would have passed. Descriptions came from varied sources: an elderly gentleman out with his dog, noting the vehicle's dented fender; a young couple on their porch, recalling a partial license plate with a 7 and a 4; the church janitor glimpsing a capped figure at the wheel. The truck became the pivot point, prompting an exhaustive compile of every matching vehicle in the region, 127 in all, and a grind of interviews, alibis checked, cabs inspected for telltale signs. On October 25th, 8 days after the night that changed everything, the owner surfaced: James Whitley, a 42-year-old mechanic at a gas station mere blocks from the diner. "Just engine trouble," he explained calmly to the deputies at his door. "Pulled over to let her cool, then straight home." His wife nodded along, pinpointing his arrival at 9 p.m. sharp. With no concrete contradiction and no grounds for deeper intrusion, investigators noted his name but moved on, though a nagging doubt kept him in their peripheral vision. As the probe deepened, other shadows emerged from the community's edges. Victor Ramirez, a 27-year-old cousin from Arizona who had visited weeks prior carrying whispers of unrequited interest in Sarah. She had turned him down gently, he claimed, before heading back west 3 days before the vanishing, his alibi backed by work records that would later invite scrutiny for their neatness. Thomas Blackwell, the 56-year-old titan behind the mining operations, including Robert's workplace, faced anonymous tips of heated arguments over safety lapses. He countered with a solid account of a business dinner in Birmingham, vouched for by a table of witnesses. Daniel Cooper, Becca's ex from 6 months back, their split reportedly stormy, offered no alibi, but cooperated fully, even submitting to a polygraph that cleared his name, no threads tying him to the night. By early November, momentum faltered like a dying engine. The FBI, initially a surge of resources, began withdrawing as national priorities pulled them elsewhere. Local efforts persisted on dwindling tips, but the harvest was meager. The absence of hard evidence crippled progress. No fingerprints to match, no stray fibers to analyze, no bloodstains to tell a tale of violence. The twins' room offered no anomalies, their belongings a snapshot of interrupted lives, the only gap being Sarah's pendant, a silent clue to her final moments. Witness stories, once sharp, blurred under time's erosion and media's glare. The young couple bickered over the truck's exact spot. The pharmacy clerk wavered on the exit time, shifting the timeline by crucial minutes. Worst were the phantom sightings flooding in from the region. The sisters spotted pumping gas in Georgia, waiting at a Tennessee bus stop, dining in a Mississippi cafe. Each diverted scarce manpower to chases that ended in frustration. "Chasing specters," one deputy grumbled off record to a persistent reporter. "Everyone means well, but imagination runs rampant. turning nothing into leads that lead nowhere. The case might have clung to its urgency longer, but December brought the Harmon County Bank heist, a brazen robbery that left 3 dead and a fortune vanished, siphoning regional forces into a manhunt that overshadowed the quiet agony of the Martinez file. By Christmas, the daily updates had ceased, volunteer groups disbanded, posters curling yellow at the edges like forgotten promises. The investigation remained active in official ledgers, but its fire had dimmed to embers, stirred only by sporadic tips that fizzled out. Several elements conspired to entomb the case in cold storage. The era's forensic limits meant potential traces went unseen or untested. The sprawling countryside, with its dense woods and derelict mine shafts, defied thorough sweeps. Scarce cameras left no visual breadcrumb trail beyond the diner's lone feed, and perhaps most critically, a narrow investigative lens fixed on the truck and early suspects, overlooking stray reports like an odd station wagon near the home that night, filed away without pursuit. As 1974 faded into 1975, the twin story shifted from urgent headline to lingering riddle to etched legend, parents invoking it to curb nighttime wanderings, annual reflections in the paper stirring old aches. The family pressed their private vigil, but official wheels turned slow, the trail growing cold under layers of time. What hour marks your place in this unfolding? Whether bathed in daylight or wrapped in night, know that somewhere searches continue unabated, echoes of quests like this one. In the Martinez home, time itself seemed to halt on that October evening. The family calendar forever flipped to that month, the date encircled in crimson as a marker of fracture. For Robert and Maria, and their younger children Miguel and Lucia, existence splintered into before and after, a line drawn in grief's unyielding ink. Robert had always been a pillar of quiet fortitude, his 5'8" frame toughened by years of labor, hands calloused from tools and earth, face lined by sun and responsibility. Born in Tucson to migrants who crossed borders in pursuit of better tomorrows, he had toiled from boyhood, building toward the move to Alabama that promised security for his brood. Dad was the fixer, Miguel would share in later reflections, his voice thick with memory. Broken fence? He'd mend it. Storm coming? He'd board up. But losing the girls, it was the one break he couldn't repair, and it nearly unmade him. 3 weeks after the vanishing, Robert stepped away from the mine indefinitely, what started as a pause for searches becoming a full retreat from his livelihood. Dipping into savings and selling their spare vehicle, he converted the garage into a war room of desperation, walls plastered with county maps, pins in red for scoured grounds, blue for rumored sightings, yellow for untapped possibilities. Cabinets brimmed with notes on every interview, lead, and dead end. A dedicated line rang with flyers, distributed numbers, connecting strangers' tips to this hub of hope. His routine was punishing. Dawn patrols of forgotten spots like derelict barns and hidden streams, afternoons chasing whispers and coordinating lingering volunteers, evenings poring over files under a single bulb. Sleep came in snatches, 4 hours if lucky. I'd find him at the table in the wee hours, Lucia recalled, maps spread, books on sleuthing open. He became his own investigator when he felt the law had turned away. The toll was visible. By 1976, his hair silvered prematurely. By 1980, a heart ailment rooted in ceaseless stress. Yet he pushed on, fueled by paternal fire. Maria channeled her sorrow inward, anchoring to her Catholic faith with daily masses, candles flickering for her girls in the quiet sanctity of the church. The living room transformed into a gentle altar, photos of the twins at every age orbiting a central image from months before the loss, their smiles captured in eternal youth. Her nightly rite was heartbreaking. At 8:45, the time they should have arrived, she set 2 places at the table, food steaming untouched till morning, then perched by the window, gazing into the street as if will alone could summon them back. She never uttered dead, Miguel explained. They were missing, elsewhere, never gone. Their room stayed pristine, linens fresh, as if any moment they'd burst in laughing. This hope sustained her, but walled her off. Friends' suggestions of memorials were rebuffed. Social invites declined, her world shrinking to the home's familiar confines. For Miguel and Lucia, then 15 and 12, the loss stole more than sisters. It reshaped their childhood. Dad was out there physically, Mom lost in her thoughts, Lucia shared. We learned self-reliance quick, caring for each other while holding them up. School became a minefield. In a tight-knit town, their story was common knowledge, drawing awkward silences or prying queries. Teachers tiptoed between pity and pressure. Miguel retreated into books, academics his shield, rarely mentioning the twins by senior year as he eyed colleges far west, eventually settling in California with sparse returns. Lucia stayed rooted, her parents' pillar, attending yearly remembrances, fielding media, nurturing volunteer ties. After graduation, she chose local classes, remaining homebound. Leaving felt like betrayal, she said. Someone had to bridge the gap between searching and surviving. Extended family from the Southwest sent aid, funds to ease burdens, visits to fill holidays with bittersweet warmth, though absences loomed large. Empty seats at feasts, gaps in photos, birthdays marked with absent candles. Robert's brother Carlos uprooted to Troy in 1977, lending hands to the hunt and heart to his sibling, covering bills and repairs neglected in grief's grip. They'd have searched and waited till the end, Carlos noted. It was love in its purest, most painful form. Over time, the Martinez saga wove into Pike County's soul, a tale passed down, their tenacity earning quiet reverence even from those who privately mourned the twins as lost. If this account tugs at your emotions as it did mine, subscribe to MindVeil. Together, we ensure these resilient spirits remain in the light. Pike County shed its rural skin over the decades, Montgomery's growth spilling southward like ink on a map. By the 1990s, highways linked the old with the new, ushering in strip malls, drive-thrus, and subdivisions that redrew the landscape's face. Murphy's shuttered in 1986, its space cycling through video stores, tanning beds, and gadget shops. Henderson's yielded to chain pharmacies, the square's charm fading against a 1992 mall's allure. Blackwood's operations halted in 1983, economic tides and safety fears sealing shafts, nature's vines reclaiming what man had scarred. Through it all, the twins' case remained a throbbing scar, each change a potential erasure of clues. Every demolition or pave-over made me wonder if we were burying the truth deeper, Calvin Brooks reflected, his voice heavy with regret from those initial days. The file wasn't entirely dormant. Anniversaries sparked media revivals, generating tips, mostly mirages, but some stirring fresh probes. In 1979, a new sheriff rode in on promises to crack the county's thorniest riddle, assembling a team for 6 months of re-examinations, unearthing a carnival drifter with a violent past who had drifted through in '74, only for him to perish in custody before questioning. The 1980s brought tool upgrades. 1984 FBI profiles painted a local with ties to the family or diner, deliberate in intent, narrowing gazes, but yielding no capture. 1994's DNA Dawn promised revival, but mishandled evidence from '74 proved useless. The ribbon confirmed irrelevant. The 2000s saw Alabama's Cold Case Squad digitize files in 2002, model scenarios, launch hotlines. Hope flickered, only for 2008 construction bones to dash it. Ancient relics instead of answers. By the 2000s, the story had mythic hues, ghostly sisters on autumn streets, whispers from sealed minds. For the family, it was raw reality. Robert's health failing with heart episodes, Maria's rituals softening but enduring, Miguel distant in his career, Lucia, the steadfast guardian. How's the atmosphere where you are? The Martinezes weathered endless cycles, sweltering summers, leaf-strewn falls echoing the loss, hollow winters, springs of false renewal, their resolve unchanging. October 12, 2019 echoed that distant autumn, crisp and unassuming. Deputy Tanner, too young for personal memories of the legend, probed trespass reports at Blackwood, anticipating scoldings for kids. Instead, an odd barrier caught his eye, not nature's collapse, but deliberate, with fabric peeking through cracks. Backup summoned, stones shifted, revealing the grim tableau. Bones side by side in repose, uniform shreds, the pendant's telltale gleam. It hit like facing a ghost story made real, Tanner later said. Those faces from museum walls, now here in the dirt. The site locked down. Agencies converged. Sheriffs, state investigators, feds forming a task force. Engineers shored unstable tunnels for safe extraction. Anthropologists mapping every fragment with painstaking care. Identification opened doors, but questions loomed. Who concealed them? How undetected for so long? Records showed the alcove sealed pre-disappearance, overlooked in 74 searches, pointing to insider knowledge. Forensics unveiled horrors. DNA matched. Deaths from rear blows, tool-like trauma. Positioning suggested tenderness. Hands clasped. Bodies arranged. Not strangers' discard. Soil yielded secrets, uniform matches, seasonal pollen, proprietary mine grease, access limited to select workers. Links converged on Howard Keller, 74 supervisor, briefly noted then. Past shadows. Prior vanishings queried, assaults dropped. Diner haunt, Sarah obsessed, rebuffed. Rejection-fueled rage, Agent Reeves posited, piecing fixation with violence, like if cold enigmas deserve the spotlight. Resolution defies time. Keller had vanished into visibility, 80 now, retired from mines to school upkeep till 2004. His Maple Street home, a block from the Martinezes. Yard impeccable, holidays precise. Church regular, helper to all, but privacy, a fortress. Just the quiet type, neighbor Eleanor Wilkins said. Waves hello, but no deeper, never a hint of wrong. Yet he harbored the secret amid the traumatized town. Dawn arrest October 25th, tactical surround, bullhorn wake, bathrobed surrender, shocking onlookers. News blazed, press conference confirmed charges, community reeled. Like a punch from nowhere, editor Patricia Simmons described. Theories abounded, outsiders, myths, not the man next door. Self-reckoning followed. How undetected? 1970s limits, blended evil. Alibi cracked, Elaine's hidden journals. Abuse chronicled, absence noted, lies from fear. My silence weighs, she wrote, haunted till death. Mine roll gave means, access, post-loss inspection for hiding. He wove in, vigils attended, theories floated subtly. They won't find 'em there, colleagues recalled, mistaking confession for musing. Home raid, bloodied charm, Sarah's, haired ribbon, Rebecca's, annotated logs planning the spot. Truck traced, hidden blood, twins, floorboard transport. Pike confronted vigilance's fail. Ordinary man, extraordinary dark. We seek monsters in shapes, they hide in plain, psychologist Chambers warned. Family's response layered, Robert's courtroom stare, Maria's absence, Miguel's gratitude tempered, justice thinned by delay. Town soul-searched, meetings dissected oversights, scholarships funded forensic streams. Memorial bloomed at his vacant home, photos, lights, notes of collective regret. Trial March 2020, pandemic. Shadowed but urgent, evidence timeline, testimonies, tech revelations. Defense pled age, Keller silent, emotionless. Guilty after brief deliberation, dual life terms, symbolic for each life stolen. Time doesn't lessen, judge intoned. Martinez's found end, not ease. Robert passed post-verdict, promise kept. Maria cleared rooms, donated relics, kept mementos. Siblings founded aid for cold cases, grants boosting rural probes. Nationwide template, studied for tech triumphs over old fails. FBI curriculum staple. Pike awakened. Volunteer databases, trainings, school units on awareness. Keller perished, 22, unrepentant. Truths buried with him. Yet justice stood. This echoes truth's persistence. Subscribe to MindVeil, notifications on, share for reach. What cold puzzle calls? Comment. Each unsolved holds a family's eternal weight.